He was called Lofty because he was so tall, but he was always Uncle Harry to me. And I just remember the booming voice and the laugh. Because he was such a force, I suppose he gave them faith and trust that they would get well, they would get out of this hellhole.
Harry Lofty Cannon served in the Second World War before being captured by the Japanese. He would have been a forgotten prisoner of war had it not been for a shoebox found by his niece Jill long after he had died. The shoebox contained sketches and cards by the renowned British artist Ronald Searle. Like Lofty, Ronald Searle was a POW in Changi, and the two men met in a makeshift prison hospital. Searle created a series of sketches in Changi, and many of these featured Lofty.
Searle got sick a number of times, more than once, and I think Lofty looked after him. There was a drawing of Searle with spots reaching out through the tent, and tall Lofty, the height of it, the Empire State Building, looming over him.
Ronald Searle just wrote this gorgeous end, stuck in my head. I praise the stars the night that you came into my tent. And he's written, Ronald Searle has written and said, I would not have survived if it wasn't for Harry.
I think he woke up quite often and mates on either side were dead in the morning. So whatever he didn't suffer physically, he did well to survive mentally.
Harry was their totem pole. He was such a tall, amazing figure, and he listened to them and he nurtured them.
They'd both survived the war, and Searle had in fact flourished, whereas Lofty was so damaged mentally that it's almost like he didn't make it.
At the end of the war, Harry was declared physically unfit and was admitted to Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. Upon his discharge, he was first sent to a training and rehabilitation farm for soldiers, and then he and his young wife Peg were given a soldier settlement farm. However, life on the farm became increasingly difficult.
The Japanese guards would beat him, and they would beat him round the head. And so for all the rest of his life, he had to deal with these awful headaches. Just excruciating headaches. And he became addicted to alcohol and to drugs. I think Peg was always worried that something would happen, and he used to leave her for days and sleep rough. He was just not in charge at all. It was very sad. They did try, Peg tried. Unfortunately, the farm failed, and Harry, he went into Bundoora.
Lofty would stay at Bundoora until his death in 1980. His relationship with his wife Peg became increasingly difficult. However, she kept safe the shoebox of Ronald Searle sketches, which were eventually left to Jill. It wasn't until many years later, when Jill read an article by Lee Hobbs, that she understood the significance of the sketches.
I saw this article that Lee Hobbs wrote about who influenced him with his drawings, and it was Ronald Searle. And so I thought, well, we've got some of his, And so I got my husband to ring the Age.
We had a chat and they were lovely. And then Jill talked about her Uncle Lofty and how he'd been in Changi. And then before I knew it, there was a letter from Ronald Searle. I'd never actually held anything from him. It was like, if you love classical music, touching something by Mozart. I turned to Jill and said, do you realise your Uncle Lofty is the man that saved the life of Ronald Searle? And I actually found it quite affecting, to say the least.
And I could see him he was just so moved, and we just realised that we had this amazing story of my Uncle Harry, who was considered such a retrobate in the family, and someone that we really wish hadn't gone and got all that happened to him,
In 2002, Jill and Lee contacted the State Library of Victoria and offered the drawings and correspondence to them. They stipulated that it be called the Lofty Cannon Collection, as a way of remembering someone who never recovered from the trauma of war, but gave so much to so many in the darkest times at Changi. Searle was still alive at the time and gave his blessing to the idea of the collection.
All that Searle work, the letters and the drawings that Lofty had looked after for so long had found a safe haven. It was for all those people that went through that terrible experiences in the war and didn't come out of it intact.